Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Jazakumullah khairan for coming for Isha, of course, my Lord will want all of you. And inshallah, we're going to have a very wonderful opportunity to learn from a very wonderful brother, and how it relates to our life, especially us youngsters. We're all, alhamdulillah, all of us here are youth, regardless of the age. So I have with us Shaykh Isa Parada from Houston. So just a little background information: he was raised as Catholic, and he's El Salvadorian. So he was born in New York and raised in Houston, Texas. And he became a Muslim in 1996. And then 4 years later, he studied in the university in Medina. He studied Aqidah and Dawah. So alhamdulillah, now he's back in Houston, and he's an educational director and a counselor for the Islamic Society of Greater Houston in Stafford. So alhamdulillah, we're going to take this opportunity to benefit from him. So inshallah, to go not any further, I'm just going to give it to him.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وتسليما كثيرا. My brothers in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the organizers of this program and bless them and their families, and bless you all here today with Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. Ameen. Today my lecture is dealing with helping our youth face hardships, meaning today's hardships. Before I begin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Dhariyat, verse 55, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So remind, verily the reminder is a benefit for the believers. Inshallah, today anything that I say is a reminder. I don't want to come from the outside acting like I know what's going on specifically in Tucson, in the community here. I'm just coming with a certain perspective, inshallah, that may be able to benefit those who want to be reminded. And if there's some benefit that you didn't hear before, well, alhamdulillah. And all this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, I'm someone coming from the outside, and these are the lectures dealing with the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on how he helped the youth in his time deal with the hardships that they were going to face in the immediate future and in the future as they were growing up as Muslims. I wanted to start off by something that happened in the time of the great Sahabi Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. We know that in the time of Ali radiyallahu anhu and his caliphate, in English, in this time when he was a Khalifa, there was a lot of turmoil going on. A lot of battles and wars. There was just a lot of fitna, a lot of trials and tribulations. During a period between a battle, the illustrious companion Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told his imam, he asked his leader if he had a problem with him going to the group that was fighting against and rebelled against Ali, the Khawarij. And Ali radiallahu anhu was concerned because he knew the Khawarij were killing innocent people, were killing the Sahabas in a very, very nasty way. Killing husbands and wives, killing babies. They were notorious in the way that they were murdering Muslims. They were the first terrorists of our community, terrorizing the Muslims. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he wanted to call them back to the religion, call them back to the proper understanding of Islam. But Ali again was worried because I may send my cousin as well to his death. And I'm not going to go into much detail about the story in and of itself, there's so many lessons in that debate, that discussion between Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma and the Khawarij, those who rebelled against Ali radiallahu anhu. But one thing that we can benefit, inshallah, I think, in looking at the backdrop of the story, when you hear how the Prophet ﷺ advised Ibn Abbas, you'll see the courage that he had to go and discuss with them, debate with them, the issues that they had against the leader of the Muslims, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the three issues that they had, he shut them down with the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the understanding of the Sahabas. Because they were there when the revelation was being sent to the Prophet alaihi salatu wasalam. So they understood the backdrop of the verses that the Khawarij were trying to use against Ali radiallahu anhu. That you can't take human beings as judges, that why didn't you take spoils of war and prisoners when you won the battle? Why did Ali take away from his name Amir al-Mu'mineen? And Ibn Abbas broke them down from the ayat of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to the point where thousands and thousands of them came back to the truth. Just remember this part of the story as I go into the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he was riding with Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and he turns to his cousin and he says, Ya ghulam, oh young boy, inni ulimuka kalimat, I'm going to teach you a few words. So here the Prophet ﷺ, key word here is ghulam. It's a young man, young boy. But the advice that he was going to give him was advice that was going to prepare him to be a leader, prepare him to be a man, prepare him to be a disciplined Muslim. Even though as a young person, he might have not completely conceptualized everything that the Prophet ﷺ was mentioning to him. The words that were going to come from the Prophet ﷺ, he was going to understand as he grew, as he got older in age. So we see here the Prophet ﷺ, a way that we can help and assist the youth. Youth can be someone 10, 11, 22, 23, to up to 40 years old. Excuse me. Up to 40 years old. Where you assist them. You take time out to see their concerns, brothers or sisters. Whatever gems that you may have had through your life experience, or whatever you have learned from the deen of al-Islam, taking our time out for the youth, for those young men and women who are going to be dealing with other issues, as I was mentioning in the khutbah earlier today, things that we are not going to see, things that we are not truly, it's not possible for us to comprehend because it's not happening in our time. But the Prophet ﷺ has already prepared us by informing us about issues that the young people of today are going to be dealing with in the future. So he says, I'm going to teach you some words of advice. The first thing that he tells Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he says, احفظ الله يحفظك. He says, احفظ Allah. It doesn't literally mean protect Allah. Allah is above that. He is not in need of any of us. He's al-gharib. He's free from his creation. What it means is you guard, you protect the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will protect you. احفظ الله تجده أمامك. Protect the deen of Allah and you will find the protection of Allah in front of you. These are some powerful words, brothers and sisters. Here he's preparing this young man, telling him, as we should prepare our children or our younger siblings or the younger community members, that if you want to find true success, then make sure that you are doing that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to do. Many times I have youth come to me, younger couples come, and they're wondering why they're having issues in their marriage. And when you probe the situation, you ask them, are both of you praying your 5 prayers? Have you both made up your any days that you might have missed in the month of Ramadan, your days of fasting? Have any of you made sure that, do you owe zakat or not? And it's amazing, brothers and sisters, these younger men and women, they look at you as, it's like the first time they ever heard that type of question. And then they start saying, no, I don't pray all the time. Or I pray late. Or I pray 3 out of my 5 salat when I come back home from work. Or I haven't even looked at if I need to pay zakat or not. And they even talk about other stuff that they do. My point is, how can we expect as couples, for example, or as individuals, to see the ni'mah of Allah upon us when we are not fulfilling the duties that Allah has asked us or commanded us to do? So many of the youth don't understand, well, man, prayer's not working for me, Dad. It just doesn't work. I'm frustrated and upset. Why are people picking on me? Or whatever the case may be. We have to analyze as families. Like I mentioned earlier, what am I doing as an individual? Am I lacking in something that might be affecting my child? He's not seeing in me. She's not seeing in me, and me as a father or my wife as a mother, certain things. Maybe they see some type of hypocrisy coming from me. I say one thing, but I do another. But I never admit to them that I make mistakes, because it's not from the culture. Because it's not from a parent to say that they make mistakes. But when we analyze the situation and we sit down with our children, we have to be there to encourage them, constantly encouraging them. That you take care of what you need to do in front of Allah. And if possible, it makes us as adults look at what we are not doing, or what we may be doing but we need to improve on, so that we can elevate our family spiritually. Because when we go to work 9 to 5, it's not the same when our kids go to school 7 to 3. We're dealing with a professional type of situation when you go to work in general. But our kids, they're dealing with individuals who are immature, who are going through hormones. People who are coming from broken homes. This is the environment our children are surrounded. And it's harder for kids to mask that. Adults can do it. They can put up a front. Many times we have that issue, we put up a front even coming to the masjid. We might be the best brother or sister in the masjid, but the worst oppressor at home. But kids, it's hard for them to mask that. So all types of issues are coming in high school and middle school, and even now in elementary school. It's getting younger and younger. So when we put our kids in this environment, we as adults chose to stay here in America. So when you take the good, you have to also take the challenges. We have to accept that. And we can't walk outside here and be, oh, billah. Okay, if you want to do billah, then why are we here? Why are we here? We chose to be here. Because we only want to focus on the good. But when it comes to the challenges, we want to brush it aside. We don't want to look at reality. So again, when our children are in need of our help, we have to ask ourselves, are we there for them? Are we humble enough to say, I need help as adults? How can I help my child understand certain situations, certain things that they need to improve on? If it's not from my culture, I need to overcome that so I can sit down and have a heart to heart with my son or my daughter. Possibly my parents didn't talk to me about these issues, but I have to talk to them about it. We weren't dealing with that in Saudi Arabia or Palestine or in India, but we're dealing with it here. So how can I assist my children in protecting themselves And the first thing we do is make sure we analyze their situation. Are they fulfilling the basic obligations that Allah has commanded them to do? And are they seeing those obligations practiced by the adults in the household? And are we making it fun for them? Are we making it enjoyable for them? And are we patient with them when they go through their ups and their downs? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's a sabur. He's patient with us. He's our afu. He pardons us when we make mistakes. Do we show that type of attitude towards our kids? Just again, just for us, to all of us, me included, just to look into those situations. In another part of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says to Ibn Abbas, if you ask only from Allah. وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And if you seek help only from Allah. Again, it's preparing our children. Because they're not going to be with us forever. Even though some of us as parents don't want to let go of our baby girls. I have 6 girls. I can't imagine the day I have to marry all of them off. Or I have my son. How my wife loves that young boy and spoils him. That's her baby boy. The day that another woman's going to come into the picture, it's rough. But we have to let go. But we prepare them to be mature young men and women. Not spoiling them. Not giving them all they want. Not giving it in because are they going to rebel? And so what happens is that we start worrying about our children overtaking us instead of us as parents saying, no, we're not going to tolerate this. So in teaching them, when they ask, they only ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, before asking anyone else. When they need assistance, that they ask assistance only from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And the Muslims are the only ones in the dunya. Out of the billions and billions of people in the world, we're the only ones who ask from Allah alone. And what a great ni'mah that is. We don't have to ask the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We don't ask Jibreel alayhi salam. We don't ask Isa alayhi salam. We don't ask anyone except Allah first and foremost. So as we educate our children to do that, it builds that relationship, their relationship with Allah. That when they're struggling in a test, they don't remember everything, they start asking Allah for help. And that they look at the situation, if they didn't do good, that's what I earned. And I ask Allah to help me not be lazy in my next test, for example. Because if we don't prepare our children when it comes to ethics and morals, when it comes to education, we just think that, oh yeah, they're getting 90s. MashaAllah, one thing we can say about Muslims is that the majority of them, if not a vast majority, because we as juhal, ignorant people, when we were non-Muslims, used to make fun of the Muslims, because they were all nerds, right? We used to just make fun of them, because they were the square ones. When in reality, they were the cool ones, because they were looking for their future, we were just looking at the present. But the point being is that a lot of them have pressure. Parents put pressure. You have to have that 95 average. You have to get into the best school. Alhamdulillah. But at times, we don't realize what happens to some of these kids. If they don't take that responsibility. Or sometimes we even have parents doing homework for them. Doing their projects for them. Their older siblings do it because he has to have it done. Or she has to have this project turned in. And we as parents, what are we showing them? No. You ask help from Allah. You seek assistance from Allah, and you deserve what you deserve. And you go back to Allah to ask you to assist you to improve. Brothers, I deal with kids all the time, with college students. I never forget how Allah sometimes exposes people. I love this brother. I don't think he even intended to say what he said. I guess he didn't even think what he did was wrong. We were just having a real informal discussion about different issues. And I asked him how his school was. He was like, yeah, man, I just had a test. It was rough. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, man, alhamdulillah, the teacher was nice. They let the Muslims in the class go pray during test time. I was like, man, that's, many teachers were like, too bad. Once that test is, put on, in front of you, you're not leaving. You gotta use the restroom, too bad. You should have used it before. And some professors are like that. Well, this professor, because he knew the Muslims were good people, trusted them to go pray, Maghrib. And he says, yeah, when I, we did Taslim, I asked so-and-so, what were some of the answers because I couldn't get them. I said, did you just hear what you said? I said, that's rich, man, that's cheating. I said, you think you're going to have barakah from that test? And I said, and you said it right after you get Taslim. And this is a kid who's practicing. A kid who's actually a hafiz of the Quran. And I'm not putting him out. I mean, I love him and we're there to assist. That's why, maybe he didn't realize it. And I advise him, check him and the other brother. Don't do that again. So imagine those brothers and sisters who may not be practicing. Maybe they have more, maybe they're more, better ethically in that way. Some of them may not. But it's little things like this that it looks little, but if they're cheating in high school, they may be cheating in college. What are they going to be doing in the professional world? Are they going to be cheating time? Saying that they came in at 9, but they really came out, they stuck around, they got away with it. I came at 9:30, I didn't get caught. Thinking they could get away with this because we as parents allowed them to get away. We didn't teach them the responsibility of having that connection with Allah. Making sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is first and foremost in every affair that they do. So that when things are going a bit rough, they're struggling, whatever the case may be, they ask Allah, they seek help from Allah. And the Prophet said after that, Ta'arif ilallah fi rakhai yarifka bishidda. Know Allah in the times of ease, and Allah will know you. He will protect you, He will bless you in the times of difficulty. Again, we have to analyze ourselves as adults and then with our children as well. When I know, I'm almost sure, Allah knows best, when it's test time, I'm sure there's some serious ibadah going on in this masjid. There's some serious dua going on from the brothers and sisters. Serious. I mean, test is tomorrow, with dead week as they call it, preparing. There's some serious tahajjud going on. But what happens in September and October? MashaAllah, y'all studying, but the pressure's not on. Or if we're struggling at work, or we're struggling with our relationship with our siblings or our parents or our spouses. We ask Allah in the times of difficulty. But when things are going smoothly, are we going back to Allah and thanking Him, praising Him? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it in the Hadith Qudsi. When you do good, praise Allah. That in and of itself shows our appreciation of what Allah has given us. When Allah gives us the opportunity to do that positive, when things are going great, when work is going awesome, when our grades are just going up and up, our family life is at ease, things are just going, mashallah, great. Are we returning back to our Lord? Or is it only when we need Him in the times of difficulty? And here Allah, the Prophet made it clear. Know Him in the times of ease. It teaches you to be balanced. Allah will know you in the times of difficulty, when you really need Him. But again, it teaches us to be balanced. It teaches our children to be balanced as well. And don't only try to do something when you need it. Do something because you love to do it. Do those chores not because you want your allowance. Do it because it's pleasing to Allah. Don't memorize this page of Quran so it pleases your parents. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate you on Yawm al-Qiyamah when you recite a verse. One verse. You go up every level, every time you read one verse of the Quran by memory. So when we start to have that type of connection with our Lord, our children start having that connection, you see a different type of believer. How the Prophet ﷺ was already prepared Ibn Abbas. Did the Prophet ﷺ specifically know that he was going to be dealing with the Khawarij? There's no hadith to say that he did. But he was preparing that young man to go with tawakkul ala Allah. Relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He was going to take care of him. Because he was going to do something good. And that was caring for these people. Even though they were terrorizing people. They were killing human beings. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma cared for them. He cared for their akhirah. Because the Prophet, he knew the hadith of the Prophet who said, Al-Khawarij Kilab al-Nar, that the Khawarij, those who rebel against the deen of Islam, are the dogs of the hellfire. Ibn Abbas knew these hadith. He didn't want them to go to hell, to the hellfire, no. He wanted good for them. Even though he knew that it was a situation that was difficult. But because, subhanAllah, Ibn Abbas remembered Allah during the times of ease. He knew that Allah was going to be there for him in this time of difficulty. And trying to invite people who were completely out of whack when it came to their understanding of Islam. This hadith is a long hadith. I just wanted to touch upon 3 more points. You can benefit much from this hadith. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of the past, he said, the one who misses out on this hadith misses out on a great blessing, meaning from the understanding of what comes out of the great lessons, that come from this hadith. The one who never had the chance to read it. So someone can just get the small matan or the small book, the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, open up to the hadith 19 and just read the hadith with your friends or your spouse or your children and just look at it and reflect upon it. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Wa'lam, he told Ibn Abbas, know, inna nasr ma'a sabr, that verily victory comes with patience. Brothers and sisters, we know our community has gone through a lot of trauma through the past 100 years, where Muslims have been looked down upon, to say the least, been insulted, been taken out of their lands. And me, as a person who accepted Islam, I didn't grow up in that environment. I don't understand the trauma. I'm not trying to act like I understand. But I can say, I do know how it affects the children. When many parents focus on what's going on overseas, and their frustration comes out in the household, a lot of times their kids think that Islam is connected to what's going on in Palestine or Egypt, or Pakistan or Kashmir. And it's all political. Either those kids get upset and angry as well, maybe they're not being treated with respect here, or they say, you know what, this is crazy, I'm not even trying to, this is Islam, I'm not even trying to deal with it. Everybody's just always upset and angry, the Muslims always look down upon. When we look at the different hadith of the Prophet, we know that victory is going to come. Victory will come. When the Dajjal is destroyed, when Isa comes, the Muslims already have Palestine. So, it's going to happen. Because As-Sadiq al-Masduq said, the truthful one, the Prophet said that it's going to happen, so it's going to happen. I am not saying that we ignore the people who are suffering. But many times, because we're still thinking about our home countries, we're not thinking about our child and his environment, his home country. The situations that they're dealing with on a daily basis. The trauma that they deal with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The things that they see. And many parents don't understand because our emotions cloud our judgment because we're only looking for what's going on over there. And right here, our kids are struggling. That with patience, victory will come. And it teaches us as parents that our kids are going to make mistakes. And that we have to be patient with the mistakes that they make. The issues that they deal with social media. I, as a father of 2 teenagers, 1 preteen, I thought I knew something about social media because I know a little bit something about Facebook. I didn't know nothing when I started finding about Instagram. I didn't know what was going on. First and foremost, back in the day, you can't find many pictures, even before somebody liked pictures. And I'm not into the whole picture thing. That's just me. So I never even got into it. And my daughter, when they said, can I have an Instagram account? So I'm like, what, just your friends? Yeah, all right, no problem. I mean, that was my first time ever really looking into something. I found it to be a mistake on my part. I just kind of like, is it sort of like Facebook? Yeah, okay, we could keep checks and balances and, make sure that you're not looking at anything inappropriate or you're not doing anything inappropriate. My boy, who also has my brother, his name is Wasim, he has 6 kids. He has teenage daughters as well. He said, because our kids, my boys play soccer together, or football, right? So, we talk sometimes, and he's like, does your daughter have an Instagram account? I'm like, yeah. So then you need to make sure that, I'm not saying your kid is doing anything wrong, but I found out that they can look at all kinds of crazy stuff. My point in all of this, so when we got on there, we started looking. Her friends who had other friends and all that stuff, I was like, man, people are obsessed with themselves. The pictures that kids take, we're talking about Muslim kids. We're not talking about non-Muslims. That's a whole other issue. We're talking about Muslim kids showing off their 6-packs, showing off their, seriously, I'll kid you not, brothers. Girls, Muslims, showing off their hair or sometimes even showing off some of their body parts. And I'm like, what's going on? Now, I can't overreact because it was my fault for not looking into that affair as a parent. Not really looking at it and saying, okay, how can I assist my daughter to really understand what Instagram is about? Or even Facebook or what have you. So I had to sit down with her and talk to her about these issues. Why having this account at this time may not be the best thing for you. Because you're not accustomed to seeing these types of things. Even though we have non-Muslim family members. She has cousins that are girls who are non-Muslims. And she sees them do certain things. But on that level, from Muslims, she wasn't accustomed to. She wasn't ready to deal with it. My point is, I gave her a Facebook account because I knew that I could handle that a little bit easier. A little more control at this age. And little by little, she's going to have to make her own decisions in life. But many times, we don't realize what our kids are doing. What they're being pressured to either do, or they're feeling like the only way I'm going to fit in is by doing certain things. Because we as parents are not looking at certain situations that are happening right here. The nasr will come with the brothers and sisters all around the world. But it has to be with patience. The same thing the Prophet said, with ease or with relief comes affliction. The same thing. Teaching our children that you're going to go through tough times. You're going to have to struggle. We cannot protect our children, put them in a cocoon. It's not realistic. In this society, we can't do it. Because so many of our kids, when they come out to the real world and they're free as a butterfly, they're beautiful. Too many people are preying on them. Not salah, praying. Praying on your daughter, praying on your son. Because that is attractive. They're free now. So you have to understand, there are men and women who plot, I kid you not, to see how they're going to get a certain girl, a certain guy. So we have to teach our kids to deal with these type of issues. And they're going to go through their struggles. And they're going to go through their hardships. And the last thing that the Prophet said, and with hardship comes ease. That they're going to go through these hardships. And we as parents are going to go through certain struggles. But we have to be humble enough to know, as the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ بَنِي آدَمْ خَطَّاءُونَ وَخَيْرُ الْخَطَّائِينَ تَوَّابُونَ. That all of the children of Adam are sinners. But the best sinner is the one who makes tawbah. That our children are going to make mistakes. We are going to make mistakes. But when the times of those hardship, affliction, are we going to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we going to ask for forgiveness? We have to prepare, brothers and sisters, for certain things that are going to be happening in our community, that are already happening. I don't want to be what they call a Debbie Downer. Making it like a bleak situation. No. Because, alhamdulillah, like I said, Ibn Abbas and those who follow this hadith or trying to implement it, when they apply it in the real world, they know how to deal with these types of issues. Because my parents already prepared me. They informed me. I sat down with my child to advise. My whole point in this whole thing is sitting down with our children to advise them, to talk about real life issues. And if we may not be able to handle it, finding someone in the community, some of these young brothers and sisters who are, I just talked to them before, after Maghrib, asking them or reminding them to be more involved, if they're not involved enough, that you can be an example, a positive example for these kids. And just giving some time out, just putting, a gem in his ear or her ear, that you may not know how that might affect their life. We don't know truly those type of benefits that we can give a young person, how that will affect them. They'll never forget. I remember you advised me 10 years ago. And I really benefited from that, because when girls were coming on to me, you had sat me down. My parents never sat me down. You talked to me how girls were going to come at me in college. And it helped me to deal with girls even when I turned away from them, they wanted me more. They were like, it's playing hard to get. So they saw that I was different, and it was a fitna for a lot of these young men and for the young women. But being able to sit down with your child to talk about real life issues, preparing them to deal with these things, brothers and sisters, is just my advice, or a reminder for everyone here. And especially for those young brothers, in a few years, you'll be married with children. 1 minute, like I held my baby when she was premature, now she's 15 years old. Time just flew like that. One day, this young man, inshallah, will be a 15-year-old young man. How did we prepare him as a community to face the challenges here in Tucson, or wherever he may go in the future, no matter where he goes? But it's being humble enough to say, I need to take more time, sit down with my spouse, and make sure that we're on the same page in dealing with these different types of issues. Because if we're not on the same page, then our kids are going to feel it. They're going to see it. So we could be there for them as a united front, so that they see that they're not going to play one side over the other. And for you young brothers and sisters to know that sticking to the core principles of Al-Islam, sometimes we overlook it. Sometimes we're like, yeah, I know, I've been to many seminars, many programs, I got it down packed. It's not when, you won't really see it until you put in certain difficulties. Where is the application of all that information that you learned? And I tell you, trust the system. Trust the system. If you trust Islam, you trust in Allah, trust in the guidance that the Prophet ﷺ gave us, then you will see that success. As the ayat in Surah Al-Ahzab, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, indeed he has attained the highest of achievement. You will find success, but you have to trust in the system. Trust that if I'm going to ask Allah, as I do every salah, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. You do we worship, you do we seek help in. How am I truly seeking help, guidance from a Lord that I may not truly trust or have complete confidence in? Again, it's a reflection upon where I am with my relationship with Allah. So that you, brothers and sisters, can be a catalyst for the youth of these communities here throughout Arizona or wherever you may go, to assist them in dealing with, like I said, issues that are going to come in a few years that we're not even ready for. 10 years ago, I wasn't ready for social media when I came back from Medina. When I left, there was hardly any internet going on. There was no Facebook. Come back, I just was in shock. Like I just came from outer space. Even though I'm born and raised in America, being in Medina was a cocoon. I was isolated from the world. It took me a good 2 years to get back into the group of things. So we have to be ready to deal with these issues. And this is a hadith that gives us an example of the Prophet ﷺ taking out time, advising the young men and women of the community, give them words of advice. Yeah, like I said, it's planting that seed that we don't know how that fruits are going to come about in the future. So with that, inshallah, I'll stop here. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us our good deeds and bless us all in this world and the hereafter. Jazakallah khair. Wa subhanaka wa bihamdik. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions from the brothers or sisters side. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to know your take on sometimes some families, like when they got kids, or sometimes when I have like conversation with my friends, I ask them why don't you get married and stuff like that, and they will tell me I don't want to raise my kids in the U.S. And so families, when they have kids, they just send them back home. But I came from Mauritania, for instance, and I feel like I practice more of my religion here than when I was there.
More time.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So what's your take on that? You advise like people to do that?
Take your kids back home?
Yeah, to get like to have for education. And the other question, sometimes I remember like when I was growing up, I always had questions like regarding like I always felt like shy talking about my dad. It's not because I was scared of him, but the culture like respecting him. So always go back to your parents and stuff and ask them about it. So what is like the best way to come to your dad and ask him about his life?
Two very good questions. One question was about raising, basically having your kids here, and then once they're older.
No, because sometimes they say, no, I don't want to raise my kids here because of distraction.
Okay. Oh, like my take on raising your kids not in America and going back to their own country.
Yeah.
I mean, those things are case by case issues. A lot of times it might not be in the best interest of specific families to stay here because people may not be ready to deal with those type of challenges because you're out of your element. So again, my take is it's a case by case scenario. If a family feels that raising their kids here is going to be more of a detriment, then if it's better to go back to their home countries, just understanding, that there's going to be consequences in either decision. If you go back home, me living in the Middle East for 8 years, I can tell you, I was scared to put my daughters in high school in Saudi Arabia because of the things that were happening. I did not want to have my daughters see the things that were going on there from the Muslims. It's easy to explain to my daughter, non-Muslims, they do certain things. But for Muslims, in Medina, I didn't want to put them in that position. So a lot of times, people migrate even from America to, the Middle East and think that their kids are safe. And, I used to talk with people in Jeddah and Riyadh and they'd be like, man, we thought that we had to almost stop, like parenting was going to be easy. It's even it's more challenging for us because we don't realize the challenges that the kids are going to go through when they go back or when we took them there. Being American, everybody thinks that my kid is the most immoral person in the world. They're the coolest person because they're American, and they don't know these issues that are with drugs and alcohol and parties. They don't know about that. So then when my kid is thrusted into that, he's in shock. I could have protected him more in America than I did in these other places. So whatever choices people make, you're going to have to deal with the challenge. I mean, parenting doesn't stop. So that's a case-by-case scenario. As for my advice and young brothers or sisters that want to talk to their parents, it's a reminder that the Prophet ﷺ didn't shy away from these type of issues. There are hadith authentic, that the Prophet ﷺ said that if you were to say in certain communities, I guarantee you'd get kicked out. Because they would not believe that the Prophet ﷺ said these type of words. Very explicit scenarios. And I'm not going to say it here because I won't get kicked out. Right? I'm not saying y'all can't handle it, but there are certain things that the Prophet ﷺ talked about when it came to, marital relations with the opposite gender and things of that nature, or other stuff. It was very explicit. It shows us as a community that the Prophet saw something to shy away from. Women and men will come to men. So my advice is, specifically here, for the parents, is that you should be the first to tell your son or daughter when they're close to reaching the age of puberty. You know, whenever that time comes, or whenever you want to talk about boys and girls, and they might be 10 years like, ew, you know, 10, but maybe when they're 12, it's like, they might be a bit shy, but you keep reminding them, look, anytime I'm here, right? If we're open like that, believe me, it will make so much things easier for their future. Because I literally have to talk to a lot of the newer couples on issues that their parents should have taken care of. You know, I've talked to dozens of couples, newlyweds or premarital advice, dozens, and only 2 were ever told about sexual relations. 2, and they were girls. Not one boy ever was talked to, or young man was ever talked to about relations with the opposite gender from their fathers. I mean, I couldn't understand them. Because I remember my father at 12 years old, put me down, man, gave me the whole spiel. You know, this is what it is, man. Any consequences here and there. Alright. He talked to my mom, because even Catholics, you know, conservative Catholics have a hard time talking about it as well. So my mom couldn't talk about women's issues. My dad sat there and talked to them. He had, 5 or 6 sisters, 5 sisters. He sat them down, that's what it is. And these are boys going to approach you. And they try to touch you here, da-da-da-da. He was straight up because he knew what we were going to be dealing with in a few months or a few years. So that was the way of the Prophet ﷺ, being straightforward. The Sahaba weren't shy away from talking about these things. So in an environment like this, believe me, I just walked around the campus today, I was like, man, Allah Musta'an. I don't see how we can't talk about, how we don't talk to our kids about these issues. Because they're going to see it every day outside the masjid. How do you deal with it? Or they're going to have issues in the future, I guarantee you. Because they're going to get this advice, or from, like you said, from friends. And their friends are 15, 16-year-old, 18-year-old kids as well. What do they know? I don't care how much quote-unquote experience they act like they know. They don't know. They don't have any clue. But when a man is talking to them, when a woman is talking to them, an adult, it's a whole different perspective. And Allah knows best. It's a question for you, sisters. You don't mind? Interesting question. What are some challenges you should be prepared in an interracial marriage? And she makes a comment because we as youth need to understand that everyone comes from different backgrounds. This is an excellent question. I come from an interracial marriage. And it was, I think, tougher for my mother-in-law than it was for my family. Even though my family was a little bit like married, African-American. Okay. They let it ride. Found a little strange, but they knew that I was strange anyways, because I was a Muslim. But they let it ride. But my mother-in-law, I'm Salvadorian. So Salvadorian men, at least in Houston or many parts of America, they're not known to be the most loyal of men. This is what it said. Muslims are known, again, you're talking to someone who doesn't know about Islam and is generalizing. Men are known to abuse their women. So you're going to have a cheating, abusive husband. Right off the bat. If he was African American, maybe we'll let it ride, but he's going to be a cheater because Latino men like a lot of women, and Muslim men beat women, so it's over. It's over. Right? I was at the time, I didn't realize, wow, my mother-in-law was going to freak out like that. And again, this is from a certain angle that my wife had to learn certain nuances when it came to the Latino culture. MashaAllah, my grandmother at the time, she didn't know, she passed away, she didn't know any English. Except, anyway, she had few words, but not many. So she thought everybody spoke Spanish. So because my wife moved in with me, because I was with my mother and my grandmother would just talk to her in Spanish. And my wife would go, you gotta learn. So she learned how to speak Spanish with my grandmother and my mother. So she had to learn, she integrated herself within the culture, she learned certain nuances. And alhamdulillah, when the family, from my family, started seeing that she spoke, she speaks pretty good Spanish, right? They were just loving her now. Oh, yes. She learned Spanish, she's good, she's Hispanic, right? Well, my little sister, alhamdulillah, she accepted Islam 4.5 years ago. Alhamdulillah, I was in Medina. Actually, was cramming to take my tafsir test, and I get a call through Google Talk from Brother Mujahid Fletcher. He says, "You need to call your little sister." Okay, call her up. It's like 3 in the morning, and she's like, "I did it." "Well, you did what?" "I accepted Islam." I was done. I'm not someone who cries aloud. I was finished. That's my little baby sister. She accepted Islam. And I was just thinking to myself, I know my family's bugging because they can't say that Isa was there pushing his sister to accept Islam. She did it on her own accord, studying, asking questions. She felt she needed to change. Alhamdulillah, right before I graduated, she called me up. She said, "I met a brother, and he's Pakistani." So all in my mind, I'm like, being very honest. I was like, I deal with the community a lot, and I've seen interracial marriages through, Latino women or white women, Muslim women, or even African Americans married to, I'm being very blunt. Please don't take offense. It's just what I was thinking at the time. Marrying, Arab or South Asian brothers, and I see a lot of issues, and I was concerned. My main concern was if they have kids, is my niece or nephew going to be treated different? So when I got there, we had some discussions. My father-in-law, or her father-in-law, he had to learn that he couldn't change my sister's name. He started calling, my sister never changed her name. Her name is Evelyn. So my sister's father-in-law kept calling her a Muslim name. I'm like, who's he talking to? She's embarrassed. And I said, "Brother, listen, I'm representing my father. And if my father was here, he would be offended. She's Evelyn. She wanted to change her name to so-and-so. Great. Her name is Evelyn Parada. So please respect that name." So it was an opportunity for me to explain to him certain things from our culture and for me to understand certain things from their culture. And I remember my mother and myself telling my brother-in-law and my sister, we said, "Listen, I told my brother-in-law, you're not marrying a girl from a small street in Karachi. You're marrying Evelyn Parada, who grew up in Houston, Texas, a Latina Muslim. And Evelyn, you didn't marry a convert or an American from the streets of Houston. You married a brother who's Pakistani descent, but he grew up in Riyadh. Just understand, there are going to be challenges in your marriage. There's going to be certain cultural things that he's not going to get and she's not going to get." And I said, because my sister, who was raised here in America, married a Salvadorian man who was raised in El Salvador. And it's funny to see them not get each other. They're from the same country background, but because my sister she grew up in New York, she has a New York vibe to her. And he's from El Salvador. He doesn't understand sarcasm. Right? So, what is the sarcasm? And he sees me and my sister Trip laughing at things, and you can see he doesn't get it. I'm not saying that's a big problem, but I mentioned to my sister, it's even more of an issue because with me and my wife, with Patty, my older sister, and her husband, we speak the same language. You guys, there's certain things that you may not completely be cohesive with. So she had to understand the culture and what is expected from, an older son's wife in the Pakistani culture. I mean, I sat with brothers. What's going on? Give me the 411. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. What do I need to prepare my sister for? So, and I didn't mean to go to a long spiel, sister. These are the challenges that you go into. There's nothing like interracial marriage. It's nice. I enjoy it. because I learned from my wife's culture, and I learned even from my in-laws or my brother-in-law's culture as well. It's unique. My kids come from, speak English, learning to speak Spanish, because they were, the older ones that live in Saudi, speak a little Arabic. My sister speaks some Urdu now, right? It's nice. They're learning how to speak some Spanish. Hey, that's what Islam is about. Different cultures, different races getting together. But understand that it's not for everyone. So if some young brothers or sisters come and say, Dad, I met this, nice Muslim or wonderful Muslim, but he's not from your culture, you can't expect your parents to be like, oh, great. Some of them might be like, but he's from this background, she's from that background. But Islam says that, it's unique, and people in the time of the Prophet, Zayd, married, I forgot Usama's mother, I forgot her name, radiallahu anha. She was from African descent, and he was Arab. People, interracial marriages were happening in the time of the Prophet, Islam. But not all parents are going to be like, yeah, because it is a challenge. It's not the easiest thing. So if you decide to go down that path, just know that you have to prepare yourself for the cultural nuances and being careful on being patient with the culture of your husband or your wife. And don't act like you didn't know. Right? My mom said to me early on, you know who you marry, in general. You might have seen certain things right before you got married that you were concerned, but you said, oh, okay, we'll overcome that. When we get married, it won't be there. No, it's going to be there. You just need to know how to work it out. So with marriage, there's a lot of patience, and there's a lot of, you won't see the fruits of it until 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, when you see the change. But if you're willing to go through that challenge, but you will see beautiful, blessings come out of it. Because when you see it from your kids and their different cultures, and you see different cultures getting together, it's amazing. But at the same time, I see many times that certain couples or families are not accepted. And it causes friction within the family. And the kid is treated differently because, one is full 100% whatever, and it's just 50-50. 50-50 a lot of times doesn't get love. You just have to be ready for that. Along those lines. Yes.
I just have a comment regarding the lecture. I feel in another way, I know you mentioned that don't emphasize on what's happening back home in your home country, but I feel making that kid or that that young person, letting them know what's happening in the ummah as a whole, and giving them, in that sense, an essence that they are not in this dunya by themselves, that not just my Tucson community or my Arizona community. It's more, a community that stretches out, from the Philippines all the way to Morocco, for instance.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I believe, that's just a comment that I'm saying, is that telling them that, the Muslim ummah is like one body, you know what I mean? Just like what Rasul has said. So giving them, putting that context in their hearts, telling them what's going on in the Muslim ummah, letting them know, letting them investigate, put that rage inside them, that fire that they want to do better for this ummah. So, like for instance, if you talk to a young guy about Syria, for example, or Burma or something like that, you'll see that rage in them. So that's what you want to see from that young person, for instance, or the Muslimin in general, in that essence. Also, another question to that, a follow-up question to this comment is that, how do you put that rage or that fire in that person into the right context? You know what I mean?
So one part that you mentioned in the beginning, if a parent is able to assist their child or show their child, lead by example, by caring about the local community, then it's easy to talk about things that are going on overseas. But many of our community members, I'm not speaking here, I'm talking about the other places, will only focus on over there and could care less about here. Care less. Straightforward. It's sad to say, especially in the poor neighborhood, many of the Muslims are the ones who are oppressing the people there. Because they justify by saying, I can sell this to him or her because they're not Muslim. And they'll be the first ones to scream about overseas. but they don't care about the person they're oppressing right then and there by selling them alcohol or pornography or these type of things. And even to a lesser extent, let's say that that person's not selling them evil things, but just not caring about them. Then don't expect our kids to care about what's going on overseas, and don't expect the general community to care about the Muslims' issues. And this is something that I'm saying, if we can be balanced by saying, yes, what's going on over there is a tragedy, it's a struggle, how are you going to best benefit them? By you being the best here. By honoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, because if you are you have a better connection with Allah, inshallah, maybe your dua might be answered for one person over there. If you help a person here locally, right, that person who you affected, you never know how he or she may affect someone overseas. So many times when you're giving dawah, you don't know if that person works for Peace Corps or something like that. They saw Muslims care about us here in America, so when we do things overseas, we'll be the first ones to want to help. So the problem is that when our focus is over there, and our kids are confused. Like, was it over there or was it over here? And then what about us here? Do people care about our issues or not? But then they just brush it off. Or maybe the correct word is not rage, but the desire or the passion to want to do good for the people over there will work if they truly want to help the people over here. So that's just my take on being balanced in that fashion. And it may be different from someone, again, who came from over there, right? You have a connection to your country. All I'm saying is that our kids are not going to have that connection like we do, per se. So we have to prepare our kids to know that, yes, their ancestors came from here, and they should be concerned with over there. But the main thing is, what are we doing locally to help the people here? Are we making the Masters Country Club? It's only for us? Or is it for everyone? Right? Is it for the community? وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And I did not send you except to be a mercy to who? Mankind. The Quran is not the book of the Muslims. It's a book of humanity. So when we have that perspective, then we will truly help humanity from local, state, nation, and then overseas. And Allah knows. Quiet. So I think I'll stop here. Again, brothers and sisters, I really appreciate the community inviting me here. I hope that you also have the opportunity to come out with your children next week for Shaykh Isa Parada, who's, because my younger brother, was my neighbor in Medina. He's an interesting young man, unique in his perspective. He has a different perspective when it comes to the youth, because he was born and raised here in America as a Muslim. And so you'll find his discussion to be unique, and I hope that you all can benefit, and I hope that Allah continues to bless this community, and make it a light for the people who are looking for light, and be a way that we open the doors for those who are seeking assistance, from the Muslims who are struggling, for those who are non-Muslim who are wanting the truth, and then, alhamdulillah, for just the general community. Jazakallah khair, wa subhanakallah wa bihamdihi, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.